What's up everyone and welcome to this video. Today what I want to do is show you how you can build this application which summarizes research papers using the new Claude 3 model. And the best thing about this is that this application is written completely in Python. Of course you can tailor this application to your own needs. Maybe you don't want to summarize research papers and instead want to summarize other kinds of PDFs. This video will give you a really good template of how to build an application like this, and of course you can build on top of it. It takes me about 6 hours to record and edit a video like this, so please take a few seconds just to give it a like. Not only will it help me grow this channel, but it'll also help this video reach other people who are just as interested. I'm really looking forward to this tutorial. It's going to be jam-packed with a lot of Python, so buckle up your seatbelts and let's get started. So before we start coding, I just want to go over the Anthropic Claude documentation with you. There are some really good sections in here, not just directly related to Claude, but I think generally when it comes to prompt engineering. So if you do get a chance, take a look at it in your own time. But I'll go over like the key sections that I found to be quite useful and sections that are relevant to us, right? If you're going to be building applications that are going to be using the new Claude 3 model, I say model, but there's 3 models, right? There's Haiku, Sonnet, and Opus. You want to understand what each one of them offers. You want to understand the features and of course most importantly understand the cost differences between them. So I'll try and cover that in this section. It's going to be a bit more free flowing, just so to keep that in mind, but I think this is quite important, especially if you're going to be building applications that you might end up deploying to production. So let's start off with this section here. Here it says intro to Claude models, and they've got a link here for comparing and contrasting the different models. So if I click onto that, and as you can see, meet Claude 3, right? Claude 3 Opus, Sonnet, and Haiku. They've given a quick summary here. So Claude 3 Haiku is the fastest and most compact model, instant responsiveness, and by the way, it is the cheapest. So for most cases, Haiku will be good for you, and we're going to be using it for this application here. Sonnet is their most balanced model, balanced between intelligence and speed. It sits in the middle, and in terms of like, again, speed and intelligence, but also cost too. And then you have Claude 3 Opus, which is their most powerful and most intelligent model. It is noticeably slower. I have used it, but it does give really good results. And I have seen some videos on YouTube by other creators who are talking about how they're using it to write novels, which is pretty incredible. And they're also saying that they've compared the results to Gemini and ChatGPT, and Claude 3 Opus seems to do much better. So really good sign so far. And even in my own use cases so far, I have found Claude 3 Opus to be very good. But I think for this video anyway, we're going to be using Claude 3 Haiku. It is fast and it's more than sufficient for the kind of thing that we're going to be building today. So if we scroll further down, they tell you about or they give you recommendations for which model to use. This is the string that we're going to need later on when we're working with the messages API. And then further down, you'll see a more detailed comparison between the models. And they also show, or they also compare the new Claude 3 models with the older ones too. As you can see here, they're saying that Claude 3 Opus is moderately fast. I would probably say like it sits in between / bordering on a bit slow, but maybe I'm just used to like fast responses so far. I'm a bit picky nowadays, and probably unrightfully so, but yeah, Claude 3 Sonnet is fast, and Haiku, yeah, it definitely is the fastest. Interesting, they all have the same context window. They all support vision. They're all multilingual, and again, they're giving you more about like the strengths of each one of the models. So Claude 3 Opus, you know, really good for intelligence and fluency and understanding, whereas Haiku is good for like quick and accurate responses. Now, the one thing to keep in mind here is the cost. As you can see, I think they're charging it per million tokens, so $15 for the import per million tokens and $75 for the output. So basically the response size that you get back from Claude, you're going to be charged $75 per million tokens, right? And as you can see, you compare that to Haiku, and Haiku's like so much cheaper, right? 25 cents for the import and $1.25 for the output, which indicates basically that Opus will get very expensive very quickly. I don't think they've released or allowed businesses to use this in production yet. It's still very early stages, but just keep this in mind, especially if you're going to be building an application that you want to give off to users. You're going to have to really run different tests for each one of these models. You want to test for the temperature, which I will talk about later on, to find the optimal model configuration where you're not going to be spending too much, but you're also going to be getting all the right results for your application. And they've got a visual comparison of the 3 different models here, and they've also got a section on the benchmark performance of them. But I want to draw your attention to another section, and that is system prompts. So system prompts is something that I've been using quite recently with the new Claude 3 models, and honestly, by using system prompts, I've found that I get much better results. If you're not familiar with system prompts, essentially they're just a way for you to give like instructions, context, rules, and all these different things to Claude. Think of it like a pre-prompt that you give to Claude, and what Claude will do is take that system prompt along with your main prompt and put all of that together and give you back a much better response. And I've found found that when I give Claude this system prompt, especially when I tell it that I want you to take this PDF, or a user is going to give you a selection of PDFs, you need to go through each one of them, you need to give a structured summary, and it needs to follow this structure. And then the main prompt would be, here is the PDF, so nothing crazy there, but all the work is being done in the system prompt. And again, I found that Claude gives me a really good response. So I highly recommend that you actually take a look at using system prompts. They've also got another section here called prompt library, and as you can see, they've given you examples of different prompts that you can use, right? So here's the code consultant, here's the CSV converter. I also have noticed that they've got this button here called user submitted prompts. When you click it, it's empty, but I know what they've got coming is that they're going to allow us to be able to upload our own prompts, and I think that's quite cool, right? Crowdsourcing or community driven prompts. It will be really good to see what other system prompts people are using. But if I click on one of these prompts like storytelling a sidekick, as you can see here, they've got a value for this system prompt, and in many of these prompts they have a value for the system prompt. Again, I think that just goes to show that they're really pushing this, but that's largely because when you use a system prompt, you're likely to get much better results. So highly recommend that you check it out. I found it particularly useful, and I have found that Claude gives me back much better responses when I use the system prompt. And the last section that I want to cover is the API reference. If you're building an application where you're going to be deploying to production in front of real users, I highly recommend that you check out these two sections, the errors section and the rate limit section. And the reason why is because when you're building an application, you want to make sure that you handle the different errors that might come back from the Claude API, right? So that's the first thing. And the second thing is you might be limited or rate limited depending on how many requests you're planning to send off to the Claude API. So, or if you're going to be building an application locally where you're going to be hammering the API for whatever reason, rate limits is something that you're just going to need to take a look at. Otherwise, your application is going to fall flat and fail. And if you are deploying it for real users, that's the last thing you want, right? Because if you're building a website, they probably won't come back to it, right? If it keeps erroring. So, take a look at these sections in your own time. The one section that I do want to draw your attention to is the messages API section. And at the core of it, this is where we're going to be spending most of our time. Now, we're going to be using the Anthropic Python SDK, so we don't have to worry about sending a HTTP request directly to this endpoint here. But there are a few parameters that we are going to need to provide the values for. The first one is the model, and for this one, I touched on it earlier, but you have 3 different options for Claude 3. We're going to be using the Haiku model. You can also pass in older models like Claude 2, but we're not going to be doing that in this video. The messages parameter, this one, given that Claude supports back and forth conversations, the way Claude works is it's going to generate the next message in that conversation, right? So if you're going back and forth with Claude, maybe you're building some kind of chatbot, you just want to make sure you give Claude all of the messages so far, right? Because what it's going to do is generate the next message in that. Given for this application, we're just going to have like a single prompt. We're not going to have an array of messages. It's just going to be one item, which is going to be our main prompt. Now, if I scroll down further below, as you can see, the system parameters here, that's where we're going to pass in our system prompt. The max tokens is the maximum number of tokens that Claude will return before it stops. Again, if you're building an application, maybe you're getting Claude to write a novel for you, you're going to want to configure this in a certain way, given that the maximum number of tokens is the maximum that Claude will return in its response. So the last 2 parameters are the stream and temperature parameters. Stream essentially controls how you get back the data from Claude. So if you want to render the chunks of tokens that Claude give you back as a stream, then you want to set this equal to true. So if you're building a chatbot, it makes sense to print the tokens that Claude give back to you as a stream, and you want to render it as it comes in, right? Whereas if you're not, if you don't want that, maybe you just want the response all in one go, you set stream to false. I think by default it is false. And for this application, I'm setting it to false because I'm just going to wait for the whole response to come back. And then the next parameter is the temperature parameter. And this one you kind of want to meddle with. As you can see here, it says it defaults to 1, but it ranges from 0 to 1. And what they're saying is that you want to bring it closer to 0 for analytical or multiple choice tasks, or you want to bring it closer to 1 for more creative and generative tasks. When they say task, they're just saying the response, or they're just referring to the response. So for this one, given that in this application, we want Claude to take a look at this research paper, we want it to draw out the key insights, but we also want it to do it in a sort of structured and organized way. I'm going to set temperature to 0.5, but this is something that you're going to have to like meddle with to find the right value for the kind of prompt that you're going to submit. So there's no perfect answer until you actually try it for yourself and see what value makes sense. So there's one more library that I want you to take a look at, and we're going to be using it in this video, and that is the Streamlit library. This is quickly becoming one of my favorite libraries in Python to build UI. Honestly, I think it's the best library right now to build UI in Python. Typically, if you've worked with any kind of applications before, you know to build UI, you would have to use HTML, CSS, JavaScript, right? That's the classic stack. And then you might use frameworks like Tailwind, Chakra, and then you combine that with Next.js and React, and you've got full stack applications. But building UI in Python has never been easy. You've had libraries like somewhat segmented libraries, so Plotly for charts, but it's never been like unified. There's never been one library that just does it all. And I think Streamlit is that library, and I really like it. And if you go into the API reference, you can kind of see how jam-packed this library is with all kinds of features for rendering or for building and rendering UI. So here you can see like text elements, you can have data elements too. So you can have data editors, you can have tables, you can display metrics, you have charting elements too, so this is really cool. And then you have input widgets for users to be able to click buttons, checkboxes, drop downs. And then if I go down below, you have status elements, that loading bars, and these are really handy, right? These are things that you would actually use, and you actually do use when it comes to UI. And on the whole, this is just one of my favorite libraries right now, because Python's always been that a back-end language that you build, you kind of do processing with Python, and it happens behind the scenes, right? It's not meant to be used for UI, right? But if you've ever wanted UI in Python, right, it's something as simple as dragging and dropping a PDF, right? Which is something that we're going to be doing in this application. That's never been easy before, right? But now with Streamlit, it just makes all of that easy. So anyways, I just wanted to kind of take a moment to applaud Streamlit and kind of bring your attention to it, because yeah, it's a really cool library. I highly recommend that you check it out, and it's the best library right now for building UI in Python. Okay, so what I've done is I've created this project directory. I've called it Claude 3 Haiku Send PDF App, and in this directory there's no files at the moment. This is going to be our main project directory. And what I've done is on the right hand side I've got the browser, and what I'll start off by doing is specifying the dependencies that we're going to use for the project along with the version numbers. We'll then set up a Python virtual environment where we're going to install those dependencies, all the things that you would do in a Python project. And then we'll build a Streamlit application. I'll start off by showing you what a Streamlit application looks like in an empty state. So the page will be empty. And then what we'll do is we'll build as we go along. So you can kind of see on the right hand side, as we're building it, what it looks like. So the first thing that I want to do is create two files. And first one is going to be the requirements.txt file. The second one is going to be the main.py file. And then I'm going to be using NeoVim for this project. You can use any editor you like. And there's three dependencies that we're going to use. The thing to keep in mind, we'll start off with Streamlit. I'm going to specify these version numbers. 1, 3, 2, I think, yeah. I'm going to specify these version numbers, but depending on when you're watching this video, there might be more up-to-date versions. So just have a look on PyPy and see what the latest versions are. But these are the ones that are going to work for me. So PyPDF, this is the library that we're going to use to read PDF files, 3.0.1, and then the last one is Anthropic, and that's going to allow us to interact with the Claude API. And I think we're good to go. So if I save that, and then I'll create a virtual environment by typing in Python 3-m venv, we'll call it venv, and then I'm going to source that virtual environment here. So I'm now in the virtual environment, and then the last thing to do is install the requirements that we specified in this requirements.txt file. And as you can see, it's installing all of the requirements. Okay, so it's time to start writing our main application code, given that our requirements are now installed. So again, I'm going to be using NeoVim for this project. I'll open up the main.py file. And the first thing I'm going to do is import the Streamlit library as st. And then what we'll do is we'll set up our page config. So we're going to give this web app, the title for the page, we're going to set it equal to Research PDF Insights Extractor. And then one more thing that you can do is pass in the page icon. We're going to set it equal to the memo emoji, and then I think that looks good. That's the basic, that's all you need really to run this application with Streamlit. I want to show you what that looks like on the right hand side. So if I come to this window here, to run your application with Streamlit, instead of typing Python main.py as you typically would, you type Streamlit run, then your main .py file, in this case we've called it main.py, but your main application file. For the purposes of this video, I am going to use this flag, server headless true. That way it's not going to automatically open the window because I've got other tabs open. I don't want you to see those. And if I tap enter, as you can see, it's now running the application at this address. So if I copy that and then I go to the right hand side, paste that here, as you can see, our application is now running. Now, although it's empty at the moment, that's exactly what we expect because there isn't anything we've done. The only thing we have done, as you can see on the title, it's being rendered here, Research PDF Insights Extractor, and you can see the page icon has been set to. So let's start building on top of this application. Okay, so what I want to do is import the libraries that we're going to use for this project. I'd rather do it now so we don't have to do it later on. So the first one is the OS library. We've imported the Streamlit library, and then we'll import another library, or we'll import from PyPDF2 import PDF reader. We're going to use this to read the contents of the PDF, and then we're of course going to use Anthropic, or from Anthropic, import Anthropic. Okay, so let's start off by setting up a title for this page, just so it looks nice. So Research PDF Extractor, and then what we'll do is we'll set up our Anthropic client. This is going to take an API key, and what we'll do is we'll import the API key from our environment variable. I'll show you how to do that a bit later on when it comes to running the application, but when it comes to API secrets, never hard code them. Always pull them either from your environment variable, which is usually injected when you deploy your application, or pull it in from a secrets manager. Do one of those two things. In this case, we're going to have the environment variable store our secret, and that's going to be in a separate file. So assuming it is in the environment variable, to extract that out, it's going to be os.environment.get. I'll call it Anthropic API underscore key. That's good. Okay, so now it's now we've got like the client set up. It's time to start writing the code that's going to render the ability, or render the UI for a user to be able to drag and drop a PDF, upload it, and then of course send it off to Claude. All right, so I've moved myself off to the right because last time I didn't, and then I blocked the code, and that wasn't good. So I'm not going to make that mistake again. So one thing with Streamlit, by the way, is when you make any code changes, when it saves, it will automatically re-render, and that's quite cool because the nature of this kind of development, especially if you've built like UI before, is you want to see the results instantly, and so having this side by side is a common workflow for front-end engineers, and so that's quite a nice feature offered by Streamlit. So what we want to do now is have or add the option for a user to be able to upload a PDF, right? So to do that, the first thing that I'm going to do is create a file or a variable called uploaded file. I'm going to set that equal to Streamlit file uploader. The text is going to be enter or select a PDF, and then the type of this file, we're going to set it equal to PDF. And then as long as a user provided us a PDF file, you can double check that by typing if uploaded file is not none. At this point now we've got the PDF file, or the location of the PDF file. We now want to put it into a PDF reader object that's going to allow us to take the text out from that PDF, because ultimately we want to take all of this text and pass it off to Claude. So what we want to do now is add the PDF widget for a user to be able to upload a file. So let's start off by creating a variable called uploaded file, and then we'll set that equal to a file uploader provided by Streamlit, which will say select a PDF, and then what we'll do is we'll pass in a type, or we expect the type of that file to be PDF, and then we'll double check that the file was passed in. So we can do that by typing if uploaded file is not none. And then what we now want to do is read the contents of a PDF into this text object. We need to build this up, so we'll start off by creating a PDF reader object, and this is going to make use of the library we imported early on. We'll pass in the uploaded file, and then what we want to do is have this text object that we'll set equal to empty for now, and then we'll iterate through each page in the PDF, and then we'll append to the end of this text object the contents of it. Sorry, if I come here, here it's going to be pages, so each page in the PDF. and then we'll add to the end of the text object page.extract text, right? And so the idea is by the end of this, all of the text from the PDF will be in this text string, and then we'll add a subheader. We'll add a subheader that's going to be extracted PDF contents, and then we'll have a text area, and we'll set it equal to empty for now. We'll set the value equal to the text of the PDF, and then we'll give it a height of 300. Let's do 300. So essentially, when all of the text extraction is complete here, we want to have a text area that's just going to show it. It just serves as nice validation that the text was read correctly from the PDF, and we can confirm that. So once that's saved, what I can do now is upload a PDF, and it's going to display its contents. Okay, so what I've done is I've selected the PDF. It's a research paper called Fasting. I think it was published in 2022. The effect of fasting on human metabolism and psychological health. Given that I'm fasting at the moment, and intermittent fasting, fun fact, was actually one thing that helped me lose 30 kilos a few years ago. So yeah, I'm a big believer in fasting. It's definitely helped me. And so I've got this research paper here. I've selected it with this widget that we added using Streamlit. And as you can see here, our text area has rendered all of the text from that PDF. And we set it with a decent height, which was good. So now we've got all the text. We've confirmed that it was able to extract all of the text. It's now time to set that up for a prompt that we're going to send off to Claude to ask it to give us back the key insights and a few other things from that PDF. So early on, I mentioned how system prompts are an amazing feature. I highly recommend that you use them when it comes to working with Claude. And I found that it ends up giving me much better responses than if I didn't use them. So for this application, we are going to be making use of a system prompt. I found this one online, and it's incredible for extracting key information from a research paper. So I'll show you what that looks like now. So I've created, or I have the system prompt in a local file, and I've put it in this file called systemprompt.txt. By the way, I will include a link to all of this in the description below. But the system prompt essentially goes like this. It's quite long, right? And again, this is one of the most powerful things about LLMs, right? You don't need to reinvent the wheel. And as we get better, when I say get better, as we start writing prompts and there's more efforts to try and drive them from the community and crowdsource them, soon enough we're going to have these really good go-to prompts for doing tasks like this, right? Because as you can imagine, credit to the author, this is an amazing system prompt for extracting out key information from a research paper. So it starts off, I made one or two changes, but at the top, the system prompt goes, you will be given a research paper and your job is to extract the following, right? And this is where the crux of the system prompt begins. So it starts off with the first section, which is extract the title of the research paper. So we want the citation information, the author, the title, the journal, the source, the publication year. We come off to the next section, which is contextual insight. And this is really just to give a summary of the paper itself. So in a sentence, condense the abstract into a single, easily understandable sentence, keywords, target audience, jargon density. Then we have another section for the purpose and objective of the research paper, or the research that was conducted, background knowledge. And you know, this is, as you can see, right, it's an amazing system prompt, and this is something that is worth reusing. So so I've got that system prompt in a text file, and what we'll do here is we'll actually import the system prompt, and we're going to use it for this application. Okay, so let's use this system prompt. So the first thing that I'm going to do is open the system prompt.txt. We'll open it in read mode, and then what we'll do is we'll have a system prompt variable, and we'll set that equal to f.read. So we read the contents of that text file in a system prompt. And then this is a good place to set up our main prompt. Our main prompt, because all of the work was done in the system prompt, is going to be quite straightforward. Here is an academic paper. And then what we'll do is we use XML tags because Claude works pretty well with XML tags. And then in this, we're going to pass in the text from the PDF. But what we'll do is we'll pass it in at the point when we actually call out to the API. So I've put these placeholders here. So this is going to be a format string in Python, and we're going to inject the contents of the PDF, which is above in that text string above that has all of the text from the PDF object, and we're going to inject that later on when we call out to the API. So let me just close out this XML tag paper, and we're good to go with the main prompt there. So now it's time to put all of this together. What we'll do is we'll add a button, and when the user clicks on this button, it will trigger the call to Claude to send off the system prompt, the main prompt, all the text from the PDF, and get back a response. So we'll start off by adding the button, and at the same time we'll check that if the button was clicked. So we'll do that by typing if st button. We'll call this button, or the text for this button will be extract insights. So if they click the button, we will set up a response variable that will store the result of calling out to the Claude API. Great. And this is where we need to provide values for the parameters that we discussed earlier for this call. So the first one I'm going to set is the system prompt. The second one that I want to set is the max tokens. I'm going to set this equal to 1024. For now, I think that should be sufficient. With this, you might want to increase it or decrease it depending on what length you expect back from whatever prompt you're submitting. I think 1024 for this case is more than enough. The next thing that I want to set is the model, and the model for this I believe is Claude 3 Haiku, and then it's 2024. As you can imagine, they update these models, so you just need to make sure you know the string for the model that you want to use. I'm getting an error there because it's messages. Okay, and then once you set the model, the next thing that we want to set is the temperature. I mentioned early on that I want to set, I'll start off by setting 0.5, and as you with something like this, you want to adjust it, right, depending on the results that you find. So you definitely want to test it out for yourself. And then the last thing that we want to set is the messages array. Again, this is just, as I mentioned earlier, this is just going to have one message. The role for this message is going to be user, equal to user, and then the content itself is going to be the content of the prompt, and we called it main prompt above, and then we want to format it with the text of the PDF, right? So I mentioned, again, this is a format string. So here's the placeholder right at the end, and then the text for the PDF with put in this text object here. By the time we get to this point, we can now format the main prompt with that text from the PDF. So this should be sufficient now, and when we click this button, what will happen is it will fire off the call to Claude, and then what we want to do, of course, is render this out. So let's finish this off. So when we've got a response back from Claude, what we want to do is render it, and what we'll do is we'll have a subheader here, which will be the extracted insights, and then we'll check that if we've got a response or got some content back in the response, then what we want to do is write out the contents of the response using st.write, and then we're only going to get one block of content back, and the type of that block, so if you've worked with the Claude API, you get back a response in blocks. So you might have a markdown block, a code block. I think they have other blocks too, but for this I'm only expecting one block back, and the type of that block is going to be a text block. So I know that it's going to be in response.content. There's only be one block, so I can access it with content 0 and then the text, right? And so that should be sufficient enough. What I'll do actually is I will just put that in this if block here. So if they click the button, only then will we render out the extracted insights, and we'll put the text that comes back from the response, and we'll output it using the Streamlit st.write. So there's just one more thing that you need to do before you can give this a run. I almost forgot, and that is you need to have an environment file that's going to have one environment variable, and that is the Anthropic API key. So if you remember, if I go above, what we're doing is we're pulling the API key from an environment variable called Anthropic API_key. So what you need to do is create an environment file. I have one here. I usually call it .env, and in this file I don't want to show you the contents because that has my API key. All you need is a single line, which is export Anthropic_API_key, and then set that equal to your Anthropic API key, which you can get from the Claude API dashboard. So have that .env file, have this line, and then make sure you put your API key after the equal sign. And then once you've created that file, all you need to do is type in source.env, and that will place the Anthropic API key in that environment variable in your current environment. So make sure you do that before you go on to the next step now, which is giving this application a run. So I'm going to click on extract insights, and what I'm expecting is that the PDF and the contents of that PDF, which I can see here, along with the system prompt and the text and the main prompt, are going to be sent off to the Claude API using the Haiku model, and we're going to get back the response in a text block, and then we're going to print that out onto the screen using STWrite. So I'm going to click on extract insights, and as you can see on the top right, you can see it's running. It's taking a few seconds. I could add a progress bar. I'll leave that to you. You can add a progress bar. Yeah, it might be nice to have a progress bar here actually, but yeah, I'll leave that to you as an exercise. And there we go, it worked. So okay, cool, it extracted all the insights out. So let's go through this, right? So, you know, this is based off the system prompt. We asked for this structure, and as you can see, it's given us a citation information. So here it's extracted the authors, the title of the research paper, the publication year, the number of pages, a link that I can click, which is quite handy and it's clickable. So thank you to Streamlit for allowing that. And the contextual insight. So in a sentence, this review article examines the effect of fasting on the human lipid, glucose, protein, and neuroendocrine metabolism. I don't know that word. As well as its impact on psychological health. The purpose of objective, that section has been extracted here. Background knowledge and methodology. So as you can tell, this is quite organized and it's quite in depth, and there's a lot here, but essentially that worked, right? Which is we use Streamlit to render this UI for the application. We uploaded a research paper as a PDF. We gave it a Claude system prompt along with the text from that PDF, and it was able to extract out all of these insights, which is perfect, especially if you're a researcher going through, you know, a dozen research papers. You might just want a quick insight into what this PDF contains. So of course, this is works for in the case of research papers, but depending on your own application, you might want this to work for other types of PDFs. You can change and tailor this application for that. So that's the end of the video. I hope you enjoyed it, and if you did, please do tap that like button. It is difficult these days to grow on YouTube. One thing I will link to above actually is a video where I go over system prompts in a lot more depth. I know I've mentioned it a few times in this video, but honestly I've found that it gives me really good responses, and in another video I went over system prompts in a lot more depth. So I'll link to that, and that's worth checking out. And of course, if you enjoyed this video and you want to see more Claude API tutorials, make sure you tap subscribe and make sure you tap the bell icon so you get notified. But please do, at the least, do give this video a like. It will definitely help me in the long run to try and grow this channel. Until then, thanks a lot for watching, and I'll see you in the next one. Peace.